Hey, good morning, my friends, and welcome to the Back Shed Bible Study. It is April 19th, 2021, and this is episode number 54 of the Back Shed, and it is great to have you here this morning. I see a lot of you already jumping on, so it's fun. We're going to have a good day this morning as we explore the caves of En Gedi in Israel, in a place where David hid from Saul. So I personally think we're in for a good morning this morning, and hope you are ready to get into the Word this morning and just have a great time seeing what God has for us. Good morning, Valerie Connor. I noticed that you jumped on there. It was so fun to see you and the boys sitting right there behind me yesterday morning in church. My biggest regret was that I did not get to talk to you all. So I am sorry about that. We should have taken a minute and caught up a little bit there. But if I saw you the week before, and was glad to see you all there this morning, and see you all there yesterday, and it's great to have you here this morning. Myron, good to see you here as well. We're in for, like I said, I think a fun morning, but before we jump into things, I thought it would be fun to kind of talk a little bit about some of the things that have been on my heart and mind with the Back Shed, and a little bit of direction that we've been going, or that we will be going now that we are a year into it. I think some of you probably noticed last week that I started using these things, and you probably started to wonder, oh no, what is Cliff doing? Is he trying to look professional? Does he have hearing problems? The truth be told is that these make it way better for me to be able to hear everything that's going on, and not just my own voice, but various things that are happening along the way with this. And it is part of the move that we're making, and Luke Miller has been a big help with me in doing this. And that is, we are now producing an audio-only version of the Back Shed that will be available on podcast. And so you can subscribe. You will be able to very soon subscribe to the Back Shed Bible Study podcast, and that's going to be available on Apple iTunes, I think we have it on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, and on Amazon as well. So we are hoping for that day when you can tell Alexa, if you have Alexa, which I don't, but where you can tell Alexa to Alexa, play the Back Shed Bible Study podcast, and we should be able to do that. So that's part of adding on the headphones and trying to up the audio quality for those who are going to be joining us online. So, and I know last week some of you responded to the little intro we put together, and that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to actually go back and see some of all the former guests that we've had on over the 54 weeks of doing Back Shed. So that was a good time too. One of the things that happened over the last several weeks, back when we were doing the Easter week edition of Back Shed, and by the way, good morning, Kathy Wainscott. Good morning, Angie Bessenbacher. It was amazing to see and interact with both of you yesterday at church. Kathy, we're praying for you, praying for your brother. And Angie, you are just an angel. You're amazing as always. But during that week, that Easter week, I referred several times to a thing called the Harmony of the Gospels. And what a Harmony of the Gospels is this ability to read the four Gospels in unison and to see how the four different gospel writers accounted for each gospel story. And so this is it. Some of you, I got several inquiries of saying, hey, how do I find it? This one is the NIV, Harmony of the Gospels, Thomas and Gundry. And let me just show you one of the pages so you can get a little feel for it. This is towards the end of Christ's life in here, and you'll have a page like this where you'll see you have the four parallel versions of the story, and you can see where Matthew has lots and lots of detail, but John doesn't have nearly as much. And then you go over to the next page and whatever happened next, and it's only in Luke that the next thing is recorded. And this goes on, and there are some places where, like on this page, you'll have probably Matthew, Mark, and Luke that are telling the story, and nothing from John. So anyway, that is the Harmony of the Gospels. You can get it on Amazon. I have no clue what it costs, but it's a great Bible study tool. I'm a huge fan. Started using it in college. Mimi Mauricio, good to see you, Mimi, part of our church family. Always a pleasure to have you join us. You ready to jump into it? We're going to be in the Old Testament today. As I said yesterday at church, when Luke asked me about who my guest would be today, I said I have two guests in addition to me. It will be me, myself, and I today. So it's just us hanging out, you and me, today as we go through it. And so in order to make, whenever we do this with just me, it makes it a lot more fun when you all interact a lot. And so when I start seeing you writing things up here on my screen, that makes it a lot more fun for us to be able to jump in and really get deep into it. So be sure to drop in questions, comments, things like that. I'll make sure to hit all of them, and we're going to have a great time this morning here in the back shed. Boy, isn't this weather great? I know. I always talk about the weather, but it is. You can see the light shining on me right now because I have the shed door open. It is so beautiful out there. All right, we're going to be in the book of 1 Samuel in the Old Testament. We're going to be in chapter 24, and we're telling a story of that happened during the kingship of Saul. And Saul, of course, is the first king of Israel, as Israel said to the prophet Samuel, "We want a king like the other nations." That's what got us Saul. And God said, "I want to be your king." They said, "No, we want a king. We want to be like the other nations." I can stop us right there and just say, this is oh so common, right? I think of it in our church, and we've talked about this over the last 3 years at Sunrise, as we went through a season without a senior pastor, where it made a lot of us anxious that we did not have a senior pastor at our church. And I think it was a season that was fantastic, where God was able to say, "I am your pastor. I am your shepherd. I am your king. And I want you to follow me, not a man." And we went through over 2 years, and then the delay, even after we had found a pastor, of the visa. And so God put us through a season of saying, "Sunrise, I want to be your king." So I feel like this passage, anytime we talk about Saul and David, it really hits close to home for a lot of us. So I hope you'll enjoy as we go through this, and I guarantee you're going to find yourself somewhere in this story, whether it is in Saul, whether it is in David, somewhere in there you're going to find yourself. Good morning, Maggie. So fun to see you here. It was good to interact with you yesterday during church as I was moderating the live stream. By the way, I know some of you watching were noticing we had some audio issues yesterday and within the first couple of songs in both services. And fortunately, we were able to get those corrected, but we apologize for some of the technical difficulties. We're still learning how to put on a live stream. But not here in the back shed. We got this all figured out because it's me, myself, and I, you know. Sorry, you just deal with me. Just put up with me, okay? Here we are. We are in 1 Samuel chapter 24, and gave you the context of leading into this. The context actually starts in 1 Samuel chapter 23. At the very end, the last verse says, "And David went up from there and lived in the strongholds of En Gedi." And so again, we're at the point where Saul is king, and but David has already defeated Goliath. At one point along the way, this is in this "What Got Us Here" part of the Bible study. At one point along the way, people are singing, "Saul has killed his thousands, but David has killed his 10,000s," or it was some kind of song. Was it hundreds or thousands? Anyway, no matter what, Saul was incredibly jealous of David and David's popularity that was growing more and more. And so Saul, in almost his insanity, which was his just quest for more power, his quest for more fame, he started pursuing David, and with intentions to kill David, to put him to death. That's what got us here. And so David goes and hides in En Gedi, in the strongholds of En Gedi. Well, let's do a little screen share here, and we're going to head over and show you exactly where En Gedi is and what it looks like. So let me put this on the screen for a moment for you, if I can find the correct desktop to share with you. And so you'll see here, this is a map that I have put together that shows Israel. And you can see on here, this is where Jerusalem is. Bethlehem is just there to the south of Jerusalem. And En Gedi is right here on the west side of the Dead Sea. Elevation wise, and most of us understand that the Dead Sea is quite a way below sea level. It's actually 1,260 feet below sea level. And so this is low down here. It's going to be hot. In a place that is a bit rugged. I have some pictures here to show you. This is a picture I took when I got to visit there back in 2016. And thank you to a portion of Sunrise that helped make it possible for me to be able to visit here. But as you kind of come up out of the Dead Sea and the valley, you head into, as you can see, this an area. It has a spring running down through it, and you head up through this what would you call that? Not a valley. It's through these, between these ridges, and you're going to be able to see off in the distance. You can see right there in the cliffs there. You can kind of start to see some caves up there. This is looking back from the trail there down toward the Dead Sea. So again, you can see some caves in there, and then you can see the Dead Sea out there. And as you look across the other sea to the other Dead Sea, to the other side, that's Jordan. That's the area that they would call Moab. And if you all know Nate and Gra Pels from our church, that's where they have lived over there in Moab. I'm going to say a quick hello. Good morning, Michael Paul. Good morning, D. Kurtz. Good to see you here. In case you just joined us, we're having Cliff only today, me, myself, and I, and so we're expecting lots of interaction today. So there's looking back towards the Dead Sea, and now as you're looking up, as you're heading back into this ravine, and up there, you can see in the edge of the cliffs there are some caves up there, and so it's very easy to imagine that somewhere back then here, 3,000 years ago or whatever it was, that you had these, excuse me, we just had a little spilling accident here in the shed, so apologize for that. I'll have to tell you, remind me to tell you the story of what just spilled at the end. I think it will be fun and funny for some of you. Anyway. Okay, so here we have, you're looking back up, you see caves that are up here in the cliffs, and it's perfectly reasonable to think that, because of erosion at the time, those, very well could have been the caves where David was hiding. You can look in. That's a picture I took of the caves that are right there in the side of the cliff there. And there's a spring that comes out, and water flows down from here. So this would have been a perfect place for David and the guys that were with him to hide from Saul, who was pursuing them at the time. So hope that helps give us a little bit of context there. Okay, so we're in 1 Samuel 24 here, and we're going to read along and just see how the story opens up here, and see what God can teach us through the story. And so at verse 1, 1 Samuel 24, after Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told David is in the desert of En Gedi. So Saul took 3,000 able young men from Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. And so they're hiding up there. And he came to the sheep pens along the way. A cave was there, and Saul went in the cave to relieve himself. For a youth pastor, this is gold, right? What junior high boy would not get excited to hear this story, right? Let's just say it. That's what I love. The Bible is not always G-rated. Angie, don't worry, I'm not going to put visuals on of that one. Okay, so Saul heads back into, good morning, Donna. Saul heads back into this cave to relieve himself, and David and his men were far back in the cave. And I hear this story, and I just imagine how on earth, was Saul deaf? Was he not able to hear any noise back there in the cave, or were David and his men that quiet? Because it was not just David, it was some of his men, and they were able to communicate with each other. I have a feeling that Yahweh, God Almighty, as the Old Testament spells out Lord with all caps, that he probably deafened Saul's ears from being able to hear this. And so the men said, this is verse 4, "This is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish." And then David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Again, pure gold, pure money for teaching a junior high boy, right? Like, you won't believe what's in the Bible, right? Okay. So afterward, David was conscience stricken for having cut off a corner of his robe. And he said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay my hand on him, for he is the anointed of the Lord." And with these words, David sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. And Saul left the cave and went his way, completely unaware of what just happened. And a couple of observations I have out of that, and this is one of those observations about leadership, is so often as we're looking for leaders who will not just listen to the crowd. Because in so many ways, the guys that were hanging out with David, perhaps they knew that David had already been anointed, that he would become the next king, and they are saying, Micah, I just read your comment. That's awesome. And they're just saying, look, David, this is it. God has, they'll spiritualize it, put Saul right in his place where you can kill him and take your kingship rightfully. And yet David in his leadership said, it's not the time. It's not me. It's not my job to do away with Saul. That's going to be God that will do that. So what Micah Paul said is, which I love this comment, is maybe Saul had his earbuds in listening to music, or maybe even a backshed Bible study. It was perfect. Podcasted on Amazon and Spotify and soon to be iTunes and Google. We're in all the places. So fun. So two parts of that is David, as the leader of his men, did not succumb to their desire to elevate him to king. He knew that it was not his time, and resisted that temptation, and did not succumb to the popularity game, which is the reason they're in this in the first place. The reason they're being chased by Saul in the first place is because Saul is ticked off that people are finding David to be more popular than him. And it would have been so tempting for David to listen to his men and just be caught in the moment and put Saul to death right there. But he knew it was not the right time, and so he made the right decision. And then goes back and sharply rebukes his men. So Saul leaves the cave. And verse 8 says, David went out of the cave, called out to Saul, "My lord, the king." Saul looks back behind him. So when Saul looked behind him, David bowed down. And I got to say this word correctly, man. I did it. Sorry. Prostrated himself with his face on the ground. Think of that for a second. The man is chasing David to kill him. And David calls out to him. And when Saul looks around and sees him, David just puts his face on the ground. Complete show of weakness, right? So he prostrates himself with his face on the ground. He says to Saul, "Why do you listen when men say David is bent on harming you? This day you have seen with your very eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lay my hand on the Lord because he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father?" And he calls Saul his father at this point, right? "Look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but I did not kill you. See that there is nothing in my hand to indicate that I am guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me, but my hand will not touch you." Wow. I mean, there's a promise he is making to Saul here. And as the old saying goes, from evildoers come evil deeds, so my hand will not touch you. Okay, let's keep on going because there's not much more in this, but I want to get into the heart of David here also. "Against whom has the king of Israel come out? Who are you pursuing? A dead dog, a flea? May the Lord be our judge and decide between us. May he consider my cause and uphold it. May he vindicate me by delivering me from your hand." And when David finished saying this, Saul asked, "Is that your voice, David, my son?" And he wept aloud. And we know here that Saul has a heart. We know here that he has a conscience, right? He wept aloud, "You are more righteous than I. You have treated me well, but I have treated you badly. You have just now told me about the good you did to me. The Lord delivered me into your hands, but you did not kill me. And when a man finds his enemy, does he let him get away unharmed? May the Lord reward you well for the way you treated me today. I know that you will surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hands. Now swear by me, my Lord." He calls David. He says, "Now swear by me. Now swear to me by the Lord that you will not kill off my descendants or wipe out my name from my father's family." And so David gives an oath to Saul. Then Saul returned home, but David and his men went up to the stronghold. They stayed there. There is so much to this, right? So much to that. But when it comes down to it, David is this man of impeccable character, and yet we never needed to get there in the first place. We never needed to get there in the first place. There are so many if-thens in this story. If only Saul had humbled himself and not worried about the fact that David was becoming popular as a leader. In so many ways, the job of a leader is to use the people that you are leading to the best of their abilities, and to use their giftedness to bring the best out of them. And so a leader who really knows what they're doing, when they see someone on their team thriving, they're going to elevate them, right? They're going to do everything they can to make them more successful, right? And so first off, when they were singing, Saul has killed the thousands, but David has killed the 10,000s. Then it was Saul could have elevated David at that point. But instead of making it about David, Saul made it about himself, didn't he? Right? He truly made it about him. He was more worried that somebody else was getting the glory for his kingdom. And I wonder, to apply this to my own life, like, are there times where I'm working to get the glory in my kingdom, or am I working to elevate people that are on my team? Okay, so Micah, you said, curious phrase, "The Lord delivered you into my hands." The Lord delivered you into my hands. So here is that moment. So you're saying, is that more of a phrase, or did David disobey the Lord? In reality, the Lord had given Saul to David to kill that day, and David was disobedient. I think you're probably more accurate that that's a phrase, that's some kind of saying of "the Lord delivered you. You were delivered into my hands." We can break apart a lot of phrases in the Old Testament that we have no clue what they mean, because we weren't there. We don't understand the context. That may be the case here. But excellent observation, Micah. Appreciate that in a big way. I want to go over to the book of Psalms because there is something here in Psalms. There's a maskil of David, and I need to find the correct one here. So let's see. I'm running so many pieces of technology here, it's driving me crazy. We are going to Psalm 57 for this section, okay? And this is so fun to read Psalm 57 in context, because it's not a maskil, this is a miktam. I really don't know the difference between the two, but we could talk to somebody smarter than me and find out. So here it is, a miktam of David's. So Psalm 57, and I love, you got to read the little part above it where it says, for the director of music, to the tune of Do Not Destroy of David, a miktam, when he had fled from Saul into the cave. And so here is David's journal. Here is David pouring out his heart to the Lord in that moment, as we find in Psalm 57. Have mercy on me, my God. Have mercy on me, for in you I take refuge. I will take refuge in the shadow of your wings until the disaster has passed. I cry out to God Most High, to God who vindicates me. He sends from heaven and saves me, rebuking those who hotly pursue me. Fill in Saul. God sends forth his love and his faithfulness. I love that about God, his faithfulness. I am in the midst of lions. I am forced to dwell among the ravenous beasts. Men whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp swords. Be exalted. Here's the song. Remember, we sing this. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. They spread a net for my feet. I was bowed down in distress. They dug a pit in my path, but they have fallen into it themselves. My heart, O God, is steadfast. My heart is steadfast. I will sing and make music. Awake, my soul. Awake, harp and lyre. I will awaken the dawn. I will praise you, Lord, among the nations. I will sing of you among the peoples, for great is your love, reaching to the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the skies. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth. And here is a man being pursued by the king to be killed. And he acknowledges his fear. He acknowledges his fear and everything that he feels around him. And as you looked at those pictures earlier, you could see the environment where he was, and it was stark out there. There was not a lot of places for protection besides these caves up in there, and lots of exposure and animals and all of that. And but he would look and say, "Be exalted, O God," right? That in the midst of all that, he could say, "Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be over all the earth." And I can only imagine that Saul was in that spot of exalting himself and wanting to see his glory. And so this is why, if you go back, God did not want to appoint a king over Israel. He wanted to be Israel's king, because he knew that a man would exalt himself. He would make his own name famous. He would not make God's name, Yahweh, Jehovah. He would not make that name famous, which is exemplified at points along the way before this, when even Saul would go to Samuel and say, would you plead to the Lord your God on my behalf? He wouldn't even say my God. He would not even claim the Lord as his own God. He would acknowledge it was Samuel's God, because he was his own God in so many ways. And so I asked the question, how many times do we make ourselves our own God? How do we be more like David in this instance? How do we, and the reality was David was being pursued, and so he fled, right? He fled away from Saul. And yet when that moment came to be able to potentially put Saul to death, he would not do that. And he used that moment to really cast burning coals on Saul, so to speak, as the expression goes. And he would have the opportunity later, if you keep reading in 1 Samuel right there, there's going to be a very similar instance that comes up yet again, where he was able to get in right in the midst of Saul sleeping, and has the opportunity to put a spear right through Saul in that moment as Saul's sleeping, and instead takes the spear and then calls out from the other side of the valley, "Hey, look what I could have done again. Come on." Oh, to be like David. And yet we know David goes on to have his moments when his own humanity shows up, and he can't get past the lust of his flesh. He can't get past, and even as things go on in his kingship, uh, abusing his authority. And so he struggled with it too. And again, all the more reason that we don't depend on the kings of the earth. All the more reasons why we look to God, the God of all creation, as our king. He is our king. Fun stuff, right? Love your comments. Hey, Randy, what an example for us to do the same thing, especially when things are not going well, to exalt God. Randy and Terry Pels right there. Especially when things aren't going well. That's right out of that Psalm 57 passage. David has bad moments. That's the reason I learned about God's love, right? And yet, even in all the bad moments, David remains a man after God's own heart, right? God would say that, regardless of all these things. And his heart would always ultimately turn back to God. He would repent even in his darkest days. He would turn around. But that's another Bible study for another day. But I hope you've enjoyed heading in to the caves of En Gedi today. If you joined on late, if you go back and watch, we have pictures of the location that you can see, kind of modern day pictures of some of the caves there at En Gedi, and some location clarifications where that all is in Israel, relative to the Dead Sea, and so on. Yes, don't depend on the kings of the earth. Hashtag politics. Amen. Right? It will get us in trouble every time, even if that king of the earth is doing things we like. The moment we start elevating them up, putting them on a pedestal, gets dangerous. Gets totally dangerous. Our priorities get out of whack. Idolatry. It is absolute idolatry. What we do with so many of our politicians is pure idolatry. And yeah, and no, you can't refute that. Sorry. I said what we do with some of our politicians. I didn't say all of them, and I didn't say all of you are doing that. But there are times where we start to have idolatrous attitudes because we think our salvation can be found in a politician, and it just can't. Or that a system will save us. Christ will save us. Christ's blood saves us. That's it. The gospel saves us. There is nothing else outside of the gospel that will save us from our sin, and that will save this earth from its suffering that it's going through. So anyway, but that's another conversation, again, for another day, maybe when I'm feeling a little more bold. Not feeling as bold today. Great morning. Appreciate it. Let's boy, if I had one of you on here, I'd ask you to pray right now. I'd get Micah on here and say, Micah, would you pray for us? But I'm going to pray, and then I want to update you on next week's guest. This one's going to be fun. So let's do it here. Lord, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for this amazing Monday, the beauty in it. I love spring. I love the season when I don't have the heater or the air conditioning running in the house, and the savings that come along with that. But more than anything, it's just, it's great to be outside and to experience the earth that you created and the beauty that you made. And Lord, I thank you today for the lessons that we can learn from David and Saul, hiding in a cave in En Gedi. Help us, Lord, to know that you are king, and Lord, to respect how you're working, even through evil people, Lord. I think of Saul at this moment, as he was in that cave, was an evil man that is in so many ways being led by the enemy. And yet David backed off and was reminded that he was your anointed, God. that adds perspective for all of us right now. So Father, I pray that in the power of your Holy Spirit, you would help us to understand that perspective and how that perspective is applied to everything that we do and all the people that we interact with and people we don't agree with and people that are pursuing us and so on, Lord. Would you be exalted? In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Boy, comments showing up while we're praying. God has allowed all that is going on. We need to depend on him to get us through. This is true. This is true. And I pray for your boldness. Thank you, Donna. I sometimes don't want it, but I know I need it. So next week, this is going to be fun. I am going to flash another slide here. I've been working on this one for a while. And as you all know, I have an affinity for the country of Papua New Guinea. I've been over there 4 times, putting on camps for missionary kids over there. And all of those times, on every one of those trips, one of the things that they did for our small group was they took us out into the bush. We got to get in a small plane and fly out and land on a jungle airstrip and to be with missionaries that are out there and see their work firsthand. And so several months ago, Myron Heitman, who is I saw was watching earlier in the episode, was sent me a website of a missionary bush pilot and that has a YouTube channel. And what he does is he has GoPro cameras on his airplane and he kind of talks you through his flights out into the bush. And as many of you may know, I have my private pilot's license. I haven't exercised those piloting privileges in many, many years, and my life insurance company doesn't want me to anyway. But I still love aviation and I love missions. And so a missionary aviator, like we support Jeremiah and Mindy at our church. A missionary aviator is someone that I have so much respect for. Well, that guy that that Myron got me onto his YouTube page. I reached out to him last week. He reached right back out and said, yes, I'd love to join you on your podcast. And so next week, we are going to have a very special edition of the Backshed featuring the missionary bush pilot. His name's Ryan Farron. He's a missionary in Papua New Guinea pilot, flies a Quest Kodiak plane. And this guy's got 170,000 YouTube subscribers, people that follow along. The channel name, Micah, is Missionary Bush Pilot. And you see that I got that on the screen. And you can go to youtube.com/missionary bush pilot. And so actually he's going to be getting up early in the morning, and tomorrow at noon, he and I were going to be spending some time in the shed together, recording our advanced episode that will premiere next Monday. So on Monday, I will not be with you live as far as on the screen, but I will be watching along in the comments and commenting along. So you're not going to want to miss this one. This guy is a lot of fun. And should we go to his page real quick? We'll go to his page and put on one of his videos, and you can see just exactly what I'm talking about as far as what he does and how he tells a story. And he's got a lot of pilots that are that follow along. And so it's been pretty cool is he's had a number of it's a lot of people in the secular world are following along because they just love his stuff and what he's doing. So we're going to bring this video up here in just a second. Once I'll put it on the player here once the little ads have passed on. But I would love for you to see what he does, and it'd be fun for you all to watch along here with me. So let's go full screen on that. We're going to pause it, and then I'm going to share it with the sound. And there we go. Do I have his sound turned off?
Think.
All right, here he is.
20 degrees of flaps.
Okay, he's getting ready to land in one of the most difficult
6840.
little airstrips in all of Papua New Guinea. And so he talks you through this on his videos, everything that he's doing.
A little bit lower out. For 82 knots. We'll hold our altitude till that hill over there. 22 knots final.
I'm in
Flaps
fast forward.
checklist is complete.
Oh, okay.
7 knots of headwind. 9 knots of headwind.
Now, don't worry. We're not going to be
minimums,
watching videos the whole time.
All right, that's
but now
exactly
watch
where I
this
wanted
crazy
that.
landing that he's going to do, okay?
Do need to go around, power up, 20 degrees, left-hand turn.
Now, you see that little airstrip right there?
Committed.
Oh, right there.
$500.
One of the joys I've had is all like I said, every time I've gone out there, I've been able to ride in a plane
Ooh,
out
that
there.
parking bay looks really soft.
These grass strips, which has been.
I'm not going to go into it all the way. I'm just going to turn right here.
And then he takes his
sink
followers,
in or something like that.
shows them where they're going there and what it looks like. So. A lot of perspective for people.
Looks like
to
the
be
RA
able to
is still
see.
working on getting the runway inspection. They're just measuring it right now, but should be around 454 meters.
So there you go. That's a little preview of what we're in for next week. I hope you'll be able to join us. And otherwise, that's it for the Back Shed today. Thank you for being here with me. I've loved being with you. Have a great Monday. Have a great week. Hope you'll join us for Pastors Live on Wednesday at 2:00. We're going to be interviewing Pastor Rachel Jackson, who has had a 7.5 year legacy at Sunrise, leading our classic worship service, and even just the last year of being in charge of our entire worship department and production of our online service. If you were watching yesterday at church, you know that Rachel's going to be moving on to another church in town, and God's going to do some neat things there. And so Luke and I will be here on Pastors Live with Pastor Rachel, and we're going to celebrate her time at Sunrise in that time. So looking forward to that. Again, 2:00 on Facebook Live, and then we have the Luke Miller podcast coming up on Thursday. Wayne, I just saw that you said you've been watching his videos for a while. I figured you had, so I was going to be sure that you knew he was coming up on next Monday. So. And we'll see you at church on Sunday. Remember, if you're coming to church, no signups needed. And we have our masked only service at 9:00, mask optional at 10:30. And hope you're able to make it to one of those or here online. I love you all so much. It's just a joy to be with you. And I will see you next week here on the Back Shed. Bye-bye. Have a great day.